Well, Kait and JJ, so glad to have you on Java with Julie. I'm super excited about this conversation about dating. And I got to tell you, I was looking at your website, The Heart of Dating, and it reminded me a little bit of that movie Hitch. You ever get that?
Oh yeah. I've definitely seen Hitch in general,
Yes.
and I love that movie.
Yeah.
Wait, so am I Kevin Spacey and Kate's this
No,
beautiful?
Kevin Spacey's not in Hitch.
Oh, it's
What are you
not
thinking?
Kevin, what's his name?
I know you're talking about the guy with the funky dance moves. You definitely are him though. That's
What's his
you.
Yeah, what
What's
is
his
his
name?
name?
I don't know, with the
It's
glasses.
Yeah, I
Gosh,
know who
he's
you're
in
talking about.
he's in
Yeah.
Paul Blart Mall Cop as well.
I've never
Yes.
seen that.
Kevin James, is that his
That's
name?
it. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, my husband would know. He knows every movie actor, like off the top of his head. Yes.
Anyway, I'm that guy,
Okay.
and Kate's the beautiful.
Is that true? I don't know. I don't know your story, but just like what you were saying on your website in terms of, hey, we're gonna help you do this the right way. And boy, dating's
Yes.
just so confusing, full of landmines. I thought, yeah, this is sort of like the Christian version of Hitch. So
I love that. I take that as a major compliment. I love that movie.
Oh, for sure.
yeah. I'm sure what you're offering is way better than that and far deeper. So we're gonna dig into it. But obviously I haven't dated in many years. We're just about to celebrate our 30th anniversary, so I can't
Oh,
say in my
amazing.
time, but I am familiar with what's happening with dating just because I have sons in that age group and lots of nieces and nephews and people that I mentor. And boy, it feels like from what I hear, dating's sort of the wild, wild west today. Like there's no
Yeah.
there's no like pathways, standards. It's just sort of like a free for all. Is that
Yeah,
true?
it's chaos out there in the wilderness. It is. It can be. It's crazy out there. It really is. I mean, dating, bless it, okay? Because it's awesome that we get to decide now who we are marrying versus
Mm-hmm.
back in the day. They were arranged.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a cool blessing to that, but at the same time, it's made it more complicated because we have more options than ever. And get this, Julie, we have more options than ever before because of the online dating space, because of just social media and the internet. We have more options than ever before of people to meet. And yet we are more single than ever before in history at this moment in time. And so it's really, if that gives you any picture of the dating scene, that should be it, is that we are more single than ever before, even though we have more opportunities to date than ever before. And so, yeah, it's pretty chaos out there. What do you think, JJ?
I mean, my favorite way to describe it is like you literally have people out on a ball field, and some people are playing football, some are playing rugby, some are playing cricket, and some are playing baseball, and they're all trying to have fun and figure it out,
Yeah.
and you could just imagine that picture playing out. That's what dating is like. People have just different backgrounds, sets of rules, definitions, expectations.
Yeah.
So chaotic is a really good word to use in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. So if you were to put some structure around that,
Mm.
talk about sort of what the unspoken rules of dating in our culture are today, and then maybe some unspoken rules of how that translates into Christian dating.
Yeah, unspoken rules in the culture. So for fun, JJ and I do have watched a few reality shows, Love is Blind being one of them, because we find it super interesting to see what culture is doing in real time and why they're being attracted to certain people and how they're dating. And so what I've really seen from a cultural standpoint is everyone is driven on finding the one and this crazy spark out the gate. Like that's the biggest thing. And outside of that, then it's the second layer of, well, how do they make me feel? How do they complete my life? And, I have to have all of these amazing feelings, which is very tough because, as we know, through time, there's no human person that can make you feel amazing for the rest of your life. It's just impossible. It's absolutely impossible. They're going to disappoint you at some point. But if we go into the mindset of dating, like a lot of people do, looking for this perfect person, looking for this crazy spark, we might find a quote perfect person off the bat, or who we think is perfect. We might find this amazing spark, but that is unsustainable. And eventually, if we make a decision based on that, and then over time we find oh, this person isn't so, they're not all I thought they were. This is kind of difficult. They have some flaws. Oh my goodness. Didn't see that there. If you've already gotten to the point of getting married, now you're thinking, well, maybe I married the wrong one. And maybe, I need to break up with this person, or in a worst case scenario, divorce this person and go find somebody else who's going to make me feel that way again. And you see the divorce rate at this moment in time higher than ever. And so I'd love to say that in the Christian world, it's a bit different, but unfortunately, it really isn't in many ways. The Christians are still looking for the one, and there's a big theology of the one and finding this one soul person that God has perfectly crafted for you. And if you don't find that soul person, like, you are going to mess up on the plans that God has for your life. And so we're out here as Christians trying to find this one person. And what we end up doing as Christians is we end up putting so much pressure on dating. We, as in the secular world, they don't put as much pressure on dating. I feel like casual dating or going in and out of dating is a lot more common. But then in the Christian world, we're still looking for the one, but it's this chase of once we find it, we can't let it go. And also, in order to find it, we eliminate so many potentially amazing people, and we don't even give them an opportunity. And we probably commit to people way too quickly that we don't actually know, because we feel some sense of, this must be the person God has for me because of whatever reasons that they're evaluating this person on in the beginning, which typically is driven by infatuation.
Yeah, I mean, as you say that, I'm almost like asking myself, what's the difference between what a secular person might call the spark and what a Christian might say, oh, God told me they're the one.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Actually, yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
this just kind of unspoken, and that what I would call that is like pressure cooker.
Yeah.
There's this unspoken rule that God has one right one for you. And that just creates this high stakes dating game where you can't mess up. You got to ask out. Like, you get one shot to ask out that
In
one
the
girl
church
in the
community.
church.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work out, you're automatically the player. And she's talked to you, her friends about you. They all know you. They know your core flaws, how you mess up, and so you got one shot to
And then
lock
you can
it
never date
key
in that
into
community
blue.
again.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
cue the 8 Mile from Eminem, it's just like,
One shot, one
not blow it.
opportunity.
Yeah. And so if you go out with somebody, it's automatically assumed like you are dating, you're exclusive. Is that right?
Yeah, if you show up at church
Pretty much.
together holding hands, right? And I don't want to call it territorialism, it's, but it's in a ways it's like, well, everyone knows about it, right? You've made it public and you've only been on 2 dates, and now everyone has expectations. People are excited. There's this social pressure now for it to work out, and if it doesn't, well, we still have to see each other next Sunday in small group. Our friend group is now a little awkward. You can't ask out her friend because you might have made out after the 3rd date because you didn't have boundaries. Things like that kind of start to unfold. And we really think, dating is one of those just areas of life where the enemy has such a capability to introduce as much chaos, disconnection, and confusion as possible when done wrong.
Totally.
So hang on, I got a dog barking.
So cute.
Yeah. We'll push right through. So how do you untangle this? I mean, one of the problems is you can take an individual and say, okay, that's not God's design for dating. That's not wise. But you live in a culture where there's the expectations, there are these unspoken rules. Can you just say, I'm not going to play by those? Like, I'm going to set up my own rules?
Totally. Well, I mean, I love the fact that you teach about sex from a biblical perspective, because your biggest problem and challenge in the church was we're not even talking about it. And if we don't talk about it, and if we don't teach it really well from a biblical perspective, how to glorify God with wisdom and practical tips and ways, then we're going to learn from culture. If the church doesn't teach about it, if parents don't teach about it in a really awesome way, then they're going to learn from somewhere. Right. So number one, first up, let's just have a place where we can actually talk about it. I really don't think you can talk about relationships and dating too much at this point where we're at. So I think just one teaching about it, and then I'll let you go from there.
Yeah, I would say one really practical way that, everyone, like JJ said, it's like a ball field where everyone is playing a different game and it's so confusing out there. So what we like to do is we try to create some sort of structure, at least to say, like, let's level the playing field. We love to come alongside churches as well and like teach this kind of curriculum. But the word dating is kind of a catch-all phrase that means so many things to so many different people. When you say the word dating, does that mean I'm exclusive? Does that mean I deleted all the dating apps? Does that mean I'm in a relationship? Does that mean courting? Or does it mean that I've just been on one date with this person? Like, the word dating is so confusing and so ambiguous because everyone uses it, but everyone kind of has a different meaning behind when they're saying I'm dating someone.
Sure.
And so how we try to do it is we're like, well, let's get a little more clear and define what dating really is so that there's can be a little more clarity in this process of dating. Usually people see the stages of singleness to marriage as single, dating, engaged, married. And we like to add in a fifth step or fifth stage. And we say, really, we should look at it as single, dating, relationship, engaged, married. And so we add that fifth step of relationship that's right in the middle, because if we do that, then the dating phase is the phase before relationship. That's the time where you are getting to know someone. And we suggest over 60 and 90 days, don't rush it. Really try to get to know them over 60 and 90 days, building friendship, assessing out a little bit of their character. Don't put too much pressure on it. You're not even really necessarily in the stage thinking about marriage yet, because each stage builds on each other. So you're thinking about, do I know enough information to know if I want to be in a relationship with this person? The relationship is then to figure out, do I want to be engaged for marriage to this person? And so if we can break it down that way, then dating kind of relieves some pressure, because I'm just going to 60 to 90-minute date with this person and I don't know if I'm going to marry them, and I don't have to know that. That's okay. I'm just getting curious. I'm getting to learn about this person. I'm not telling everybody in my community group or my church, because this isn't that big of a deal. It's
Or my family.
just a date.
Yeah.
Or my family. Exactly. It's just a date. It's just me getting to know someone. And if I liked that date and they liked that date, then maybe we'll go on one more date. And then if we really enjoyed that date, maybe we'll go on another date. And you do that for 60 to 90 days. You bring some core people into it, not everybody. And then at the end of that, if some of your core people and you feel like this is something you want to continue to pursue, then you enter into a relationship. And that's where then you're showing up to church being like, this is my boyfriend, this is my girlfriend. And now you're in a process where you're getting to know each other deeper to then figure out, do I want to be in engaged to this person to marry them? And so dating is that time before relationship. That's kind of how we define dating, because otherwise everyone's out here with a different definition of it, and like you get two people with two Christian backgrounds dating two different ways and having a different definition of dating. And I think my definition is right. They think their definition is right. And then we're judging each other because we're doing it the way we think is right. But I mean, what really is the right way? I mean, there is no specific biblical dating in the Bible.
Yeah. I have so many questions about what she just said. So first of all, the idea that you're looking at dating differently than the person that you're dating is looking at dating can be a big problem.
Yes.
So what does that conversation look like? And I almost feel like that definition of dating conversation is a pretty deep conversation that maybe is like, we're not ready for that. So, okay. So Hitch, help me here. How do you set that expectation the right way?
It's so good. I mean, it's tough to do because you cannot control. There's so many factors that go into why someone believes the things they do about dating. It comes from their upbringing, what was modeled by their parents, the kind of friends that they have in the past and now, what church community they were in or are in, and what pastors they've listened to, if they've read any books on dating or done any inner work. So all of those things, and then culture, like what kind of movies they're obsessed with or shows they've seen, that's also kind of seeped into how they're seeing dating and what they think is right. And so they may be somebody who flies by the rule of, oh, when someone texts you, you need to wait a few hours to text them back, which is something you see often in movies. But you also see that even in Christian culture of like, oh yeah, you don't want to seem like over eager, you got to be cool, you got to play it cool, you don't want to seem too obsessed. So yeah, she texts you back, you wait a few hours and then you text her. I'm like, oh my gosh, they think that's totally normal because that's what people around them are doing. And I would say
Yeah.
that's kind of playing the game over here. So back to your question, how do we get on the same page? I mean, the only thing you can do is really try to be honest through time. So, for example, in the beginning of dating, when I started dating in a healthier way, because I dated unhealthy a long time, I would tell guys, like, hey, for me, I just want to let you know something about me. In the past, I used to really commit super early on to guys that I was dating. And I didn't really know them yet. And honestly, it got me into a lot of unfortunately bad situations and pretty bad relationships. And so
Mhm.
for me, I actually see dating as a time over a certain, few months to get to know someone before I'm going to invest in a relationship with them. And that for me is what feels most safe. And so I just want to let you know that that's kind of where I stand with dating. And that's leading with vulnerability and sharing bits of what I know about myself, my tendencies, and creating you know, an expectation for that other person. So if they want to get exclusive by the second date, third date, I'm not willing to do that. It's too early for me, right?
Yeah.
And then seeing how they feel. Some people might say, "Oh, okay. Well, that seems like a lot of time to get to know someone before you're committed. Let me think about that." And you just got to be honest and have conversations, not put super high stakes on it. But if you don't talk about it, then there's going to be a lot of unsaid assumptions and expectations that you each are having.
Yeah, I mean, just to clarify even further, because a unsaid assumption or expectation might be that the guy leads and the girl receives, which I actually think is right. But
Mm.
and a lot of times you might have a girl who's leading the relationship or leading those hard conversations, and I think that's a challenge in itself. So to make it even more clear and break down assumptions, I really think that the man should be leading those hard conversations. There's a funny phrase in Christian dating, and your sons probably know this. It's called the DTR, right? Do you know that one?
I do know that one. Yep.
There you go.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
go
But
ahead.
but a lot of times the guy is not going to be leading those conversations.
Right.
And so like
Unfortunately,
Kate, in your situation, you just had to set that boundary
Hmm.
and that expectation. But yeah, I agree with you. It'd be great if guys would sort of step up to the plate on that.
and we all wish that, right? And I have such a heart for that. I think instead of bashing men though in this moment, I would say like good men do exist. Some of them just have to be shown the way,
Yeah,
Hmm.
right? Not
sure.
bashed into growing into the man that they should be, but showing the man that they should be.
And for the ladies, like that, he can't read your mind. So if you
Yeah.
want to go at a slower pace, if it feels good to you to go do the dating phase, like we were just saying, over 60 and 90 days, communicate that to him and, open up a conversation. And that's totally okay that you started that conversation. If it's a need that you have and a boundary that you absolutely should communicate it versus waiting around for him to bring up the conversation. You're just like sitting there waiting, 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 waiting. No, if this is something that's really important to you, you need to be able to bring it up.
Mhm.
Yeah. So another question that I have related to this dating phase, from what you're saying, it sounds like it's not exclusive. It's sort of like it's shorter dates. You said like 60 to 90-minute date. I'm guessing that it would be good to have the boundary of no physical involvement, not just
Mhm.
sexual involvement, but this is not the stage to be even holding hands or kissing or things
Mm.
like that. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, so this for different people it means different things. When I was dating, for me, I used to hyper commit. And so as a hyper committer that often committed to the wrong people, I had to step back and say I need to take a season of not hyper committing. And so for me it was actually a big awesome challenge to date non-exclusively for 60 to 90 days. That's actually when I met JJ, by the way. I was in a season of doing that, and JJ came along, and I was already talking to other guys. The big thing for me in that is I communicated to every guy, like, "Hey, this is where I'm at. I am talking to other guys, going on dates with other guys." And yeah, I completely agree with you, Julie. Like, this isn't the time to be super physically intimate. and
Mm-hmm.
add those things into the equation, nor is it the time to be overly emotionally intimate and just, overly connect on an emotional level either. I do think, and JJ has a perspective from the guy's perspective, that it is a little more challenging in that dating phase to maybe go out with more than one girl, typically because the guy is planning the dates, paying for the dates. You want to explain the guy perspective there?
Yeah, well, I mean, everyone's capacity is different. You might have a girl who's comfortable going out with 3 or 4 guys, and then another girl who's comfortable in her limits too. I think for guys, it's much more rare to find a guy who has the ability to, with honor and integrity and playing the pursuer role, date more than 2, maybe 3 women.
Mm-hmm.
And just because, men really do want to honor, put forth a lot of
Mm-hmm.
time and effort, money, to pursuing a female. And I think when you're in that kind of role versus just simply receiving, it's logistically, emotionally, and just much more difficult, right, to date more than maybe 2 or 3 women at one time.
Okay. Yeah, and I want to ask some follow-up questions about that, JJ. You said pursuer role, and that he's going to be paying for the dates. Is that a given? Is that always the right thing to
Great
do?
question.
It's a great question, man. I mean, I just cannot think of a time that I've ever been alive in the short 29 years where it's been more just hostile. And what I would probably just say is just gender neutral. Like there are no roles, there is no expectation. Anybody can pay for anybody. And I think it's a little hyped up and dramatic to say people get upset when men offer to pay. I mean, I think that can happen, but I think it's definitely a minority. I would definitely say, though, for us as Christians to kind of hold an ethic and worldview where the man is pursuing the woman and from the get-go being the initiator, maybe providing in that financial aspect, like willing to honor and treat her by paying for the date. I would say that's still alive and well. We typically find within Christian communities and dating, I think from a secular point of view, it's a little bit more up in the air. But that's something that we absolutely love to teach and reinforce because there is a lot of uncertainty from men about how should I do this. I'm hearing from one end, don't do this, and from one end to do this. I just think there's like 1,000 different voices yelling at men to do this or don't do this.
Yeah.
And like I think about the feminism movement
Mm-hmm.
all the time, and I think about this subject all the time, specifically on men and their roles. And I'm like, the one thing I take away from where we're at, from at least cultural input and society input for men, is I really don't know what you want from men.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Right.
like I walk away from so many TV shows and movies,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just like, I can't really even pinpoint what they even want from men at this point.
Yeah, boy, that's a good point. And I think like there are sort of these echoes of what's healthy with both a man taking some initiative and pursuing and wanting to show that heart to protect and provide, and for the woman like to receive that and not to be super aggressive and offended by that. But I also have seen where that can go extreme. You've probably seen this too, where a Christian couple is dating and it's almost like they're acting like marriage light.
Yeah.
Like a woman will say, well, he's my spiritual leader. And I'm like, no, he's not.
No.
Yeah, where it's not healthy. So, so how do you find that balance of there's a difference in how a young man, or not just young, but even middle-aged man, is going to be pursuing a dating relationship versus a woman, and not falling into that, that unhealthy perspective that you're not there. You're not husband and wife. So let's not pretend that we're husband and wife.
I love that question, don't you?
That's so good. You just, I think, recorded an episode on this. I'll just say one thing. We're not against women showing that they're interested in guys. I do think that's important to say because I think a lot of girls ask, like, well, can I not show guy interest? I'm like, yeah, you can. I just think, and what I find most women truly want underneath is to be pursued in some capacity in the beginning of dating.
Mhm.
And so you can show him you're interested, give him a green light. don't ask him on the date. Don't plan the date. Don't then follow up and plan the next date. Like try, because I find, and I'm guilty of this, I used to do that. And at the end of the day, I know that I can plan and do these things, but my heart didn't really want it. And so I want to just say that. But I think that one thing at least we did in our relationship was JJ did pursue me a lot in the beginning in terms of planning the dates, paying for some of those dates. And then as our relationship progressed, you know, it actually was more like I paid for the date sometime and I planned for the date sometimes. And then he did. And we kind of traded off as the relationship progressed. And, you know, when in marriage, he plans for dates, I plan for dates. Like it's kind of like, and then your money is together. So it's like the same. But
super cool.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I love this question because I think about this all the time. You know, Christians are really good at not playing marriage in one area and encouraging not playing marriage in one area. Sex.
Yep.
And what do we say? You don't have to test drive the car. Right. Like I hear sermon after sermon every year, don't test drive the car when it comes to sex. I'm like, why is that not being talked about for all the aspects? Like marriage is so much more than just sex, right? So don't test and it's funny. In some ways you could argue the best way to date would be to have a trial marriage for a year and then after the end of the year say, all right, do you want to do this or not? But that's not what dating is it?
No.
It's not a trial marriage. It's not a test drive. You're not spiritual partners. You're not two have become one emotionally, financially, sexually, right? So how do we do dating in a way that's not trial marriage, but we are intentionally trying to get to know each other?
Right.
And
and I think that those lines become even more blurred, like as you say, move from dating to relationship. Like you're not even engaged yet, but maybe you've been in a relationship with this person for 6 months, a year or longer, and you have developed a deeper sense of intimacy and connection. And those boundaries become harder to maintain, not just physically, but also like emotionally. How much of yourself do you give? How much of yourself do you commit? And I'd love for you to talk about that. Like, is it possible to be in that relationship stage without risking getting your heart just crushed if it doesn't work out?
such a good question.
Yeah. I mean, there's always going to be a risk for pain and hurt when you are committed in a relationship, when you are pursuing love, always, unless we're robotic, which God didn't form us to be humans without feelings and without a heart. And so there's always going to be some level of risk. And JJ says this a lot, but to be vulnerable with somebody is to be woundable. And so the more you open up your heart and you're vulnerable, the more you're potentially woundable.
Now, how vulnerable you get is wisdom.
Yes, absolutely.
How vulnerable you get with someone in dating and relationship, I think just comes down to wisdom, right? Like it is extremely unwise on the first date to unpack your trauma, your story, your deepest, darkest secrets. Are you going to feel close?
Or even not even the first day. Okay, the first month, the first few months, right? Because some people are like, okay, Kate, or JJ, that's dramatic. We're not going to do it on the first date.
Some people do it on the first date, and some of them are like, hey, I've been hurt before. I've been in relationships where I've been abandoned. I just want to tell you all my stuff so you know what you're getting into. And if you want to reject me, you can do it now.
Right.
Yes.
So you're saying that's a bad idea.
Right. Yeah. It's just that comes down to we're so about dating with intention, but I think sometimes in Christian dating we skewered in I kiss dating goodbye, post-puberty culture, we skewered so hard to the intentional that we just completely forgot wisdom. Right. I can have the best intentions in the world. I can go to the bank right now and take a loan. They wouldn't give it to me, but for $100 million, and I just go to every single neighbor in my neighborhood right here and hand them $1 million. That sounds amazing, and it's so intentional.
You have great intention. You want to make everyone around you rich and feel amazing.
And it has a complete lack of wisdom, right? So intentionality and wisdom are intertwined. They're brother and sister together, and that's where we say when it comes to dating, a really wise way to approach it is like, well, be as vulnerable and get as deep as you would in a co-ed small group.
Yeah.
While you're dating, whatever you're comfortable sharing in a co-ed small group, that's a really good relational level to get to know each other. You get to know someone really well in that kind of setting. And then as you get into relationship, as that relationship progresses, and you're talking about marrying each other, obviously it's going to deepen. You guys are really going to get to know each other. You're going to we're huge fans of
Pre-engagement counseling.
not
Yeah.
just premarital counseling, but before the ring is on the finger, make sure you know what you're signing up for. Go to pre-engagement counseling, and we're just huge advocates for that.
And
Yeah.
two just really quick tools that we teach about in our program, School of Dating. We teach about something that is actually amazing and not our tool, but it's Dr. John Van Epp teaches, and a book that he writes and programs that he has. He has a book called How to Avoid Falling in Love with a Jerk.
Yeah,
It's a great
I
book.
read that book.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you know it. And he talks about the RAM model, which is the pacing model. I love that model, and Dr. Van Epp is so brilliant in showing us a model for how to pace well. So if you guys are listening to this, if you've had issues with pacing your relationship well, I would buy that book and I would definitely, read it and really practice it. And like JJ said, another thing we teach is really just knowing like your vulnerability layers of an onion, because this happens to like for both emotionally and spiritually, and obviously physically is its own category as well. But what are the outer layers of the onion that you would share with almost anybody you initially meet? Those are kind of the things you should share on a first date and a second date. Then there's a few layers deep, right? And those are maybe the things you're sharing with your community group, somebody you're getting a little more intentional with, but they don't know all that core stuff yet, right? You should not be going to the core of an onion, the very like layer 7, 8, and 9, or whatever that is. You should not be going to that anywhere near the beginning of a relationship. That should be paced out. You want to start with the top layers and then get into some of the second, third, fourth layers. And then through time, you're making your way through time, bringing in Dr. Van Epp's model through time as you get to know the person, as you build trust with this person. And as you see them through time, then you can start sharing more. But we kind of meet someone right away and we think they have such great qualities. They're so awesome, blah, blah, blah. We think we know them way more than we actually truly know them because we haven't spent much time with them. And you know that truly, logically, if you think about it, you don't really know people unless you truly spend time with them.
Right. And it's funny because we naturally do this really well in one area in our life, friendship. As you talk about the RAM model, we build friendship naturally really well. But for some reason, when it comes to romantic relationship, we just kind of feel like we have to force it. We have to, our excitement, our emotions, are they the one? Like we just jump right in.
It's like a fast speed instead of steady. And for a lot of us, steady feels boring because we're so used to this fast speed, hyper speed of connection. Or even that's what we've seen modeled. And I mean, even in Disney movies, right? It's so crazy. These things happen. It's like they meet and get married in the next week. And you're like, how do we not realize how much that's actually affected our brains that they've known each other for like a week's time and they're getting married?
Well, I think
wild.
it's also just, the fear that the longer you date, the more you're either going to be marrying this person or your heart's going to be broken. And so it feels like you want to speed up that decision.
Totally.
You want to either get out of the relationship so you don't get hurt, or you want to invest so you don't get hurt.
Yeah. And we definitely, and so it's so funny you say that because we were working with a client last night, a student, and she and this other man are about to start dating each other. Neither have really any good relational history. Neither have really dated a lot in the past 5 years. So they're both coming to the table. And I told her, I said, how amazing that you two get to date each other. Because this is either going to end in marriage or you two are going to leave each other better than you found each other, with the hope that, man, godly men and godly women really do exist. This was so encouraging, even if it didn't work out.
So I guess I would ask, like, what did you tell her to do? What would you tell that couple to do? What things should they be doing and not doing in dating so that even if they end up breaking up, they're actually leaving each other as better people and healthier people?
Yeah. I mean, man, I think instead of giving a list of 1,000 do's and 1,000 don'ts, I think about how can I set you up to just live in harmony with God and go
Yeah.
out, and just live in a way that glorifies him. So I would probably start the foundation before you go on that date. What do I really believe about this dating, how God works? Number one, God's got this, not
Mm-hmm.
me.
Mm-hmm.
God's got this, not me. Meaning, I don't have to put too much pressure on this.
And I
I
don't
don't,
have to be perfect either. That's another
right. I
thing.
don't have
Yeah.
to sell myself. I don't have to I don't have to perform. God's got this, not me. So I can just show up authentically as myself.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, I'm probably a little bit more concerned with them than I am in myself, in the sense of, I really want to leave you better than I found you. So
Mm-hmm.
I know that emotionally, physically crossing boundaries does not leave you better than I found you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
just like those kind of two groundings,
Yeah.
man, God's got this, not me. And two, how can I leave this person better than I found them, especially if it doesn't work out? Those are
Mm-hmm.
just such great bumpers
Mm-hmm.
of dating.
Which means sometimes you have to have really hard conversations, and sometimes you have to, if you're a person that doesn't like to voice your needs or you feel insecure, you're gonna have to challenge yourself. Oh gosh, I don't know if I usually avoid sharing my needs. I don't know how, if they're gonna see this as too much. You're gonna have to challenge yourself as you notice those things coming up. A great opportunity to say, man, this is coming up and my normal tendency is to run away, but instead I'm gonna have the courage to voice my need.
Mm-hmm.
Or let's say they did something that offended you or you didn't really love, or maybe you just misunderstood. They said something, you're like, I don't know about that. Instead of just like trying to figure out what it means or not saying anything and building an assumption about it, or a judgment towards them, you bring it up and you seek clarification. And a great way to frame it would be, I'm creating this story in my mind about XYZ. And I just wanted to bring that up because I sometimes can do that. And I know that when I do that, sometimes it leads me to pull away. And I don't want to do that here. So I'd really love to have a conversation about this. And, in dating, what is beautiful about dating and then relationship is we get the opportunity to practice these things that sometimes we don't practice. And even our friendships, which we may have great friends, but sometimes maybe a little more surface level. We got to get deeper sometimes with our
Yeah.
friendships.
Right.
And sometimes also maybe you do have great friendships, but maybe it just doesn't strike or hit a nerve the same way that in a romantic situation might, and might trigger you
Mm-hmm.
in a very different way than a friendship might. And so, great opportunity. Dating is such an awesome opportunity to have those harder conversations and not stray away from them. One last note on this is, a lot of people, great way to leave them better than you found them is, if you are going to end things with them, be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Don't run away. Don't blame it on God, and definitely don't ghost. Okay, do not do that,
Mm.
because we have so much ghosting going on in the current culture of the
Totally.
internet, where people just don't want to have that honest conversation. They make up an excuse in their mind that I'm saving this person from hurt because I would be rejecting them and that would hurt them. So I'm just not even going to tell them, and I'm just going to
As if that doesn't
slowly,
hurt them, right?
as if that doesn't
Yeah.
hurt them. And we got a lot of ghosting going on because we have a lot of internet connections and people who don't necessarily live in the same place, and therefore it's easy to ghost, right?
Yeah.
Don't be doing that.
So, what does a good breakup conversation sound like then?
Yeah, great conversation, great call.
Well, you've had a lot of them. Why don't you
Yeah.
speak on experience? I won't say if she was the breakee or the breaker.
I've had it both ways, man.
Yeah.
I've dated a lot. Yeah, I would say, first of all, never make a decision to break up when you feel a ton of anxiety.
Mm.
Never a great time to make any decisions if you feel a lot of anxiety, because anxiety is not from God. You need to deal with your anxiety first, address it, seek out counseling for it, mentorship for it, seek out prayer for whatever anxiety is coming up for you. And then after you deal with the anxiety, then from a place of calm and a place of peace, then decide if you want to be with this person or not. Because a lot of people are breaking
Mm.
up, first of all, when they're really anxious, and that's not a good thing to do.
I tell people all the time, if Kate actually followed through on the decisions that she made when she was feeling really anxious, we probably would have been divorced now about 15 different times.
Or you never would have gotten married, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We definitely would not have gotten married, right?
100%. And so a lot of people are like, oh, I'm just feeling so much anxiety, I got to end it.
Mm.
And we just talked to a great couple who specializes in this, but really when you do that, you're just actually seeking relief, not peace. You're like, now I feel peace. No, you just got relief because you ran away from your anxiety, and instead of addressing your anxiety and dealing with that first. So make a decision to break up with someone from a place of calm, and ideally with counsel involved. Don't just make that decision in a silo. And if you really feel like this is just not for me, you got to be honest with the person,
Yeah.
and I do like the sandwich effect to an extent, like affirm the good things you see about the person. You've probably enjoyed some things about them. They're most likely not an evil, horrible person. Most likely it's just that it was not a good match for you. So what things did you enjoy with them? Don't overdo it. You're not trying to sugarcoat the pain in a codependent way to make the blow any less,
Yeah.
any softer. You're just you do want to affirm the good things you see about them. So I would start with an affirmation and then be honest. Like for me, I would say something like, hey, so for me, I'm somebody who really likes to be honest with myself and process and with intention. And I've done that with the Lord, with some of my accountability. And I've really thought about this. And I know for where I stand right now, I don't want to move forward romantically. I don't really feel a romantic connection with you. And if there are a specific reason outside of that, then you should tell them. If I would be really honest, like tell the person in as gently as you can.
Yeah, for me,
if there's a true reason.
Like, would you even say, for me, it was concerning that it feels like an experience that you still have like active addictions within your life. And
Yes.
the person I'm looking to marry, I want them to have, a lot of victory and a lot of evidence that this is behind them, and it's something that they have really grown in.
I would 100% say that, if that's the case, right? And so some people, though, there maybe isn't like as specific of a reason, but they just are not feeling anything romantically. They've tried, and it's just, this is a great person, but romantically, I'm just not feeling like I want to move forward. So you got to be clear. And a lot of people are very ambiguous, and they're like, I'm not really sure. I don't think maybe I want to move forward, but we can be friends. And here's the last thing I'll say on that note, because a lot of people throw in, but let's be friends. And they do that to soften the blow. Again, they're like, well, let's be friends. You're a great person. And I'm like, but do you actually have the intention of being friends? Because most people, when they say that, do not have that intention. They're just trying to be nice. But a friend means I'm going to be actively in your life and check in with you. And, we're going to do life together in some capacity. And most likely you are not meaning that with this person. So please don't say, I want to be friends, unless you genuinely mean you want to be friends.
We should say, let's be strangers or acquaintances or.
Well, it's funny. It's funny that you say that. My husband and I broke up when we were dating before he got engaged.
Oh my goodness.
And I broke up with him, and I said that, like, let's just be friends. And he was so honest. He's like, we're not going to be friends. He's like, we weren't friends before we started dating. We're not going to be friends now. I'm like, okay. But yeah, we just kind of went our separate ways until we bumped into each other randomly a year later.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
But hey, one other thing I wanted to follow up with you that you said, Kait, and this is something that I've been wrestling with. You said several times I don't have a romantic connection. And one of the things that I see a lot in marriage work, and I even think dating work, is the overemphasis we put on romantic connection.
It's very true.
Like there's just no chemistry, or man, I really love being with this person, but there's no spark. Do you feel like that's a reason not to continue to pursue? Because, a lot of times that romantic connection and that spark is gone in marriage. So if we're getting married for that reason, is that the wrong primary reason to get married or even to break up?
It's a great question. I think it's so good that you brought it up, because it actually makes me rethink, sometimes when I've told people, if you really are not there in a romantic sense, you can say that. But that's usually when somebody I know is not chasing the spark. They're not chasing this crazy amount of chemistry. They have dated this person for 6 months, and they're not attracted to them in many buckets, not just physically. And they're just like, you know what? I don't even really like being friends with this person. I
Yep.
definitely I don't feel intimacy in multiple areas. And there's definitely nothing romantic there. Because oftentimes the word romantic in the society, I guess, and this is Julie, maybe you're pointing out something I should reframe, but usually it's meant I'm either a friend with you or I'm a friend that has a romantic interest. That's
Mm-hmm.
usually it. It's either I have a guy friend that's just a friend, or I have a guy friend that I'm romantically interested in. Um, Meaning I would potentially want there to be more. And so if at some point 6 months down the line you're like, I have tried all of this, I have tried to seek the different buckets of attraction, built intimacy in different areas, really see if I enjoy this person. It's just not there for me.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's where you might say that.
Mm-hmm.
Or early on in dating, this happens a lot. Like
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's 3 or 4 dates in and you just are like, man, I don't even enjoy hanging around this person at
Yeah.
all. I
Yep.
probably just don't want to be pursuing this in any regard.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess that's kind of the term I would say might be appropriate, but I'm curious to hear if you think there's maybe a better way to say it.
Yeah, I haven't broken up with somebody in a long time, so but I just am rethinking the whole paradigm,
Mhm.
because it's like the biblical paradigm is that we're brothers and sisters in Christ
Mhm.
first, and then there's a sense of moving towards a committed covenant.
Mhm.
And yes, attraction is a piece of that. I don't think it's all physical attraction.
Mhm.
Um, but I think when we use terms like romantic connection or I'm just not attracted, it's like we're working with the assumption that we get married and we date because there's such great chemistry, like sexual
Right.
chemistry, or like I've talked to so many people who like really, really appreciate and love somebody deeply, but because they don't feel that sexual chemistry or physical attraction, they're like, I can never marry that person. And I'm like, well,
Hmm.
I don't know
Yeah.
if that's biblical. I think in
Right.
marriage we work on that attraction and that chemistry because it sort of comes and goes.
Mm.
But
Totally.
Totally.
yeah.
You have a favorite story by Tim Keller about the guy at the wedding
Yeah, I
altar?
love, obviously, Tim Keller's amazing. And
Mm.
he has said this before in a past sermon of his where he's like, ah, gosh, singles, what frustrates me most or my biggest grievance with singles is that you'll have a single walk into a room with 20 eligibles of the opposite gender and immediately they eliminate like 17 or
Mm-hmm.
18 of them.
Yep.
And they're
And
only
why?
looking at like two, maybe three. And it's typically off of a physical appearance type of thing, or it's driven off the chemistry and spark. And trust me, everybody, I have chased that in so many years of my dating, and it did not get me in a good place.
Mm-hmm.
Me and JJ's testimony and our story is that I wasn't attracted to JJ in the beginning physically. He was totally not my quote type. He was younger, lived in a different state. He had blue hair, black earrings, like very interesting style, and is the funny guy. And I wasn't really attracted to many of those elements off the
I
bat.
know it's hard to believe, but
And I'm not saying that he's unattractive. When I say this, people are always like, you just called your husband ugly. I'm like, no,
No,
I
I'm
don't
looking at
think
him.
he's
He's not
ugly.
ugly. Yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely not
I,
ugly.
I like this podcast. This is so
But it was more that for me, it were things that I wasn't would have normally been drawn to. And
Mm-hmm.
but I also can recognize, and I'm very big on sometimes our quote type is driven off of things that can be very superficial, that have nothing to do with character. And sometimes our type also is driven from desiring things that will fill wounds that we've actually had
Yeah.
previously in our life. And then we're
Mm-hmm.
looking to a certain kind of person
Mm.
that is our quote type to fill those wounds or heal those wounds. And so I was in a season of knowing all of those things and being like, he wouldn't be my natural quote unquote type, but I already think my quote unquote type isn't working for me and probably isn't healthy. I want to pursue a different kind of type. I want to pursue a godly man with great character. So who cares if he's 5.5 years younger? If he is mature in his faith and he's clear and communicating great, and he loves the Lord, like this is great. Who
Mm.
cares about the blue hair? Really, it's just a hair color. Um,
Wait, so I can do it again?
I mean,
Is that what?
Would you get blue hair again if she gave you the green light?
Oh, definitely.
Would
I
you?
do. I do blonde. Yeah, I do blonde. I I don't know about pink, but I definitely do blue.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Wow.
I'm so inspired after this podcast.
Julie,
This has been a
why did we
great
talk
gift
about this?
for me. I don't know about you guys.
Oh, yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing that because I think that's very often the case.
Mhm.
You know, like what we're attracted to initially isn't necessarily the thing that's right for us. And I
Yeah.
think there are a lot of great marriages that started with friendships where you said, yeah, this is my BFF, but no, we could never date. Like there's no
Mhm.
attraction there. It's more like my sister, you know, that sort of thing. And then that deep friendship kind of grows into, wow, I see your character. You know, I
Mhm.
love the person you are.
Yeah, and listen, and we have to look at marriage from a historical point of view. And for
Mhm.
thousands and thousands of years, and the kind of covenant
Mhm.
marriage that the Bible is only filled with, the only ones that it's filled with is, arranged marriages.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And whether you're attracted to someone or not, it didn't matter. Like
Yeah.
you were arranged with them and you had to figure it out. And so
Yeah.
the Bible is much more written from that perspective than chasing, some kind of
Mhm.
romantic element to your marriage. And we're more now convinced than ever before. If you find someone who loves God and they really are who they say they are, and you love God and you really are who you say you are, then you guys can figure it out.
Mhm. Yeah.
And you can actually have a great marriage as
Yeah.
long as you guys continue to have a covenant relationship with God first and allow that to dictate.
Like it really can be much more simple than we're making it out to be.
Yeah.
Like
I agree.
we've made it so complicated. And why, back to the first question, the dating phase is an awesome time to try to build that friendship and see if you have some of that friendship connection. Because you may not be overly attracted to them in a physical way or in other ways in the beginning, but as you get to know them, even in that first 60 and 90 days, if you don't just go on dinner dates, that's another thing. Everyone's just going on a dinner date. It's so boring. And you got to do other things, do activities, build fun memories, and see this person in different environments and see if you actually have a friendship. Like see if you
Mhm.
actually enjoy being around this person and then notice that and focus on that more than that initial what's driving so much of culture, which is that spark, that X factor, that chemistry.
Yeah. Yeah. We've got your dog that just crawled up into JJ's
I
lap.
know.
So cute.
She loves making appearances on the
I
pod.
know.
So your
I hope
dog
it's
and
okay.
mine made it on the podcast this week.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, you have the school of dating. I'm so glad you're doing this. Like it really is
Yeah.
discipleship in dating.
Mhm.
Can you talk about who that's for and just how people can connect to that?
Mhm.
You want me to go?
Yeah.
Yeah, we love it just because, you run a podcast too. The goal of education is transformation,
Mhm.
right? But what we find and what you find, it's the same for me. Just listening to a podcast in itself is hard to actually affect change in my life.
Mhm.
So school dating is just discipleship and dating. It's an 8-week program. It's very intense. We meet twice a week for 2 hours. You get your own personal coach. My favorite aspect of it is, and our hypothesis is this: I could put you out on a date with the best, if you're a girl, best guy I know. He's 6 foot. He makes 6 figures. He got a 6-pack. He's a pastor.
He's all the sixes.
Yeah.
He's a missionary.
6 figures.
He
Exactly.
runs a nonprofit. Like, whatever you want, fill in the blank. But if you're not showing up the most fully alive, healed version of yourself, then I genuinely don't want to put you out on a date with them.
Mhm.
Like, I'm doing both of you guys a disservice. So we actually start, our program off with 4 weeks of inner healing, where we, just go through core wounds, attachment theory, really how you're showing up today and where that came from. I
Belief
love that
systems you've
aspect.
had about
Yeah.
yourself. Yeah.
What you really believe about yourself at the end of the day. And we start there because, man, if we can go out from there in that foundation with an attitude and a belief that God's got this, and more importantly, I'm perfectly content on my timeline, my story, how He made me. Man, I cannot think of a better way to just show up authentically in dating.
Mhm.
And then from there, we go into phase 2 and phase 3, which I'll let you.
Yeah. So, then phase 2 and 3 is more that Will Smith hitch. Okay. That's
Yeah.
where we are giving them the practicals and we are helping them go out there and date and keeping them accountable in the process and helping them deal with hard moments or confusing moments that come up. But, that's why people sign up. But what people take away almost the most is the first part. They're like, wow, I think I needed that way more than I thought. And I'm like, yeah, because we can't just go to phase 2 and 3 on how to date without realizing why we're showing up the way we're showing up. And so it's one of our favorite things we do. We're actually in the midst of one cohort right now, and it's the most hands-on that we get because it's a smaller group of people and we meet twice a week, so we run the program just a few times a year, but we absolutely love getting to do it.
Mhm.